Hello and welcome to another edition of The Rest is Entertainment with me, Marina Hyde.
And me, Richard Osman. Good morning, Marina.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not bad. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
I never know whether to say good morning because sometimes people are listening to it in the afternoon or the evening, and I'm very, so good day to thee.
Good time of day to you.
Good time of day.
And we have a lot to talk about.
We do have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about a very interesting story that people might not know quite so much about. Francis Ford Coppola self-financing his own new film to the tune of $150 million. We're going to talk about that.
Kevin Costner also part self-financing his own new film to the tune of many millions of dollars, which we will also link in together.
And talking of millions of dollars, the Sunday Times Rich List came out. We're going to try and give you the formula for becoming a billionaire in entertainment. Spoiler, it's quite difficult.
Yeah, it's quite hard. And we are also going to talk, Have I Got News For You is going to America. They're going to make an American version of Have I Got News For You to tie in with the forthcoming presidential election / apocalypse. And we will talk about that too.
Should we start with Francis Ford Coppola?
Let's, and Kevin Costner, because it's the Cannes Film Festival.
Explain the Cannes Film Festival to me, because you read about it, it feels like the Met Gala, but for film.
Yes, I suppose it's the one that everyone's heard of. It happens every year, and if you've made a film, you decide whether you're going to premiere it, if it's quite a big film, at one of the film festivals. Then it's in competition. Sometimes they don't always have to be in competition, but the films that we're talking about today are in competition, and they're in competition for various prizes, but the Palme d'Or is the most sort of famous one. There are also many, many people from the industry trying to get distribution, trying to get funding for their films. It's a bit of a jamboree, a bit of a bum fight, a bit of a, bake-off for people trying to get access to finance.
A bake-off for people trying to get access to finance.
Yeah.
That's Dragon's Den.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a little bit like that, but more glamorous. Everyone's in floor length. Coppola's new movie, Megalopolis, subtitled A Fable. He's 85. It cost $120 million, entirely self-funded.
Wow.
Which is sort of extraordinary. It's 40 years in the conception and the battle to get it made. And very briefly, I'll summarise the plot. I have not seen this because it's just premiered, but it's an architect trying to rebuild New Rome, a sort of New York analogue, very recognisable New York analogue, while corrupt politicians get in his way. And that's Adam Driver. And it's sort of what it's like to be an artist at the end of Empire. Horizon, an American Saga, is the Costner movie. Now, this is not one but two movies. This is coming out this summer. He also has 3 and 4 planned. So they're going to release the 2 parts of Horizon and American Saga. I mean, this is genuinely mad.
And he's self-funded this as well.
He's partially self-funded it. He says his accountant's furious. Imagine he wasn't thrilled about the recent divorce either, although she didn't get quite what she was going for. I think he's mortgaged some of his land. So I mean,
yeah, he's okay.
He won't go hungry.
Yeah.
But he's contributed it's not quite clear, between sort of 30 and 50 million, they think. Again, he has tried to get this going for 30 years. It's going to be and it's going to cross the Civil War, but at the moment it's a story in the American West about the expansion of the American West, and this bit is
it's about time Hollywood did a movie about the Wild West.
Yeah.
That's
when Kevin Costner did one.
Yeah.
The 2 that have been made of those cost $100 million each. Sorry, again, the figures are important. We don't like to filter all entertainment through this, but they are really important in this particular case because these are very, very expensive films, and they are, I almost want to say, last of the big swings. Kevin Costner has left Yellowstone, the most successful show on American television, and he left it to basically do this because he couldn't fit this in with it. Both of them are sort of passion / fantasy projects.
That's a very thin line, isn't it, between a passion project and a vanity project?
If we've been here before, Kevin Costner, when he directed Dances with Wolves, people are like, what? It's basically, there's hardly any talking. He was a huge movie star at the time, and his movies made many, many times what they cost to make. And he went and did this thing, which ended up winning him Best Director and Best Picture over Goodfellas. Well done to the Academy. You have cocked it up again. And Martin Scorsese. But anyway, but are they going to be ginormous flops, I suppose, is the first question. Because Kevin Costner has been in ginormous flops before. Waterworld is the famous And people used to call that Kevin's Gate, which is a play on Heaven's Gate, which was the Michael Cimino movie that sort of collapsed. We're going to link them all in the
Like
end.
biggest flop of all time.
The most famous flop of all time. And it sort of it collapsed not just a studio, a really old prestigious studio, United Artists, but it collapsed the genre of Westerns for a long time.
Oh my God.
And it collapsed really what was called the New Hollywood, which were all the filmmakers like Scorsese, Coppola, Brian De Palma, all these people like this. And they were given suddenly free reign. And the 70s is this extraordinary creative time. And you can read about it in that great book, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls by Peter Biskind. But at the end, this has become so bloated. These productions have become so enormous. And Heaven's Gate is an enormous flop. And, I think his director's cut was something like 4.5 hours. I mean, absolutely crackers. Heaven's Gate is always the byword for that. It's a trope name, as you might say. And people used to say that about Waterworld, because Kevin Costner has been in big flops before. Yeah. But actually, Waterworld is a weird one. It was sort of marketed in the end as a flop, because you could do that when that movie came out. You could say, oh my God, go and see this. And people would go and see theatrical releases that they might think would be a flop just to have a look. You cannot do that anymore.
No. Because in the old days, you would go to the cinema once a month and go, what are we watching? And go, it'd be a lot of fun to go and see Waterworld. Whereas now you have to have a particular reason to go to the cinema, and it's quite rare for people to get excited enough to go and see a film.
Completely. And you've got to get them to come out. And even though he's been on the most popular show in American television, it's very hard to get people to still come out. Also, the other thing was with Waterworld, back then you could make your profits back on video sales. Mm-hmm. This does not exist anymore. There's something about these kind of older, and in case of Coppola's case, he's 85, he's really quite old, these last big creative swings. And people have been saying, we need artists to do this and to take these massive swings in the name of art. And I mean, the Coppola movie does sound quite extraordinary. There was a moment where a person came onto the stage at Cannes and addressed the man in the movie.
Oh, yes, I saw that. But like a real life actor comes onto the stage. That was one of
apparently the least nuts things to happen. It is genuinely extraordinary. There was some boos, there was some cheers.
Very Eurovision.
It is very, it's, but somewhat more expensive in terms of the staging. And I don't know, Coppola has obviously been a huge critic of things like superhero movies and franchise movie making, maybe in general. And I do think those things have sort of killed cinema, and they've almost been like overperforming hedge funds for so long that they squeezed out everything else. And now there's nothing to put there in their place.
Here's the fascinating thing, I think. So someone like Francis Ford Coppola, one of the most iconic directors of all time, Godfather, that was his big one. And two and three sequels. Apocalypse Now. So, he's a genius.
Yeah.
Right? And he finds himself in a place in Hollywood. If you're a genius, by the way, and all of those people, the Spielbergs and the Coppolas who grew up in that system in the 70s, they are used to, there's a muscle memory of every time they have an idea, someone funds it. And they go and make it, and it's a masterpiece, and occasionally they have a flop, but then sometimes you'll have a huge hit. So he gets to a stage where he's 85 now, but he's been working on this film for a really long time. I mean, at least sort of 20 years he's been sort of putting stuff together. So he'd got to the stage where he would have an idea. He would go into a studio and say, so I've got this idea. It's set in New Rome, which is like New York, and it's the end of days, and it's, the end of the Republic of America. And they would go, not for us, Francis. And he's like, sorry? They go, no, it's not. I just don't think, because we're doing Iron Man 7. So it's just, I don't think it's going to work for us. So most directors then at that point just go, I'm going to retire and play golf and be bitter. And he just went, you know what? I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to do it myself. I made so much money over the years, and he sold his vineyards.
Yeah, most people would retire to their vineyard. He sold his vineyard and used it to make the film.
By the way, if you want to know where the money is in Hollywood, he didn't even sell all his vineyards, and he made about $500 million. Yeah. Selling his
He's got an
vineyards.
Incredibly successful vineyard, which I have actually been to.
Yes, he hasn't just got a couple of acres and some cherry trees. He's got a proper business.
I'm joking, Sting. If you've got a bigger vineyard than that, I don't want to denigrate your Tuscan estate.
I don't wish to denigrate your Tuscan estate, is the first line of such a great lost poem. So he puts in $120, $150 million of his own money, and it means he makes whatever film that he wants. And it's fascinating seeing the reactions to this film, because the reviews are all in.
Yeah.
And I was just, some of them, like the Times called it a head-wrecking abomination, a folly of gargantuan proportions. There's another review, numbing excess. But then a lot of filmmakers are saying that it's sort of a work of the imagination unlike anything we've ever seen before. Because essentially what you're doing, you're seeing a filmmaker's vision without any studio. So when people always say, oh God, studios are awful. I mean, they're the worst, and their notes are terrible, and they make everything bad. Hopefully, we're all going to get the chance to watch this film. This is what happens if there are no notes. And I think several things about it. I think it's a shame that Francis Ford Coppola can't be funded to do a movie. Of course, that's a shame, and we understand the reasons why. I think it's brilliant that he's done it anyway. And he has said, do you know what? I sort of don't care. There's things I want to do before I die, and this is one of them.
I love that. I want to live in a world of gargantuan follies. No one else, and so few people can afford to do them.
Yeah.
And if he's just decided, it's his money. You can't take it with you, can you, Richard?
But exactly that. And, there's very few people now can fund movies. We know that, and the streamers can fund movies. But Francis Ford Coppola goes, well, look, I can fund a movie. So I'm going to fund this, my own movie. And the fact that everyone has gone to see it, it got a 7-minute standing ovation, as you say,
and some booze.
Yeah. But I definitely want to see it.
So do I.
It looks amazing. And he's also said, I thought about this idea of the fall of empire and the fall of America, and it's all based on the fall of Rome. And he says, and actually, now it's being released, he says, I really see it in our culture. I see culturally we might be at the end of the American empire. There are things happening now that happened in Rome. So he's doing it for a reason. His wife passed away in April, very, very recently, and the film is dedicated to her. He said the most beautiful word in the world is esperanza, which means hope. God bless the guy.
Yeah.
People like Steven Soderbergh, the great filmmaker, just said, look, I mean, it's a work of incredible creative imagination. Hollywood owes this guy.
Absolutely.
And culture owes him, and entertainment owes him, and he's put his money out there. And it's listen, who knows what this film will eventually be like when we see it? But wouldn't it be lovely if we all go and see it?
It would be. I mean, I don't think that will happen. But it doesn't sort of matter because, but the trouble is that whilst I love that he's taken this enormous swing, and I think it's brilliant and cool and sort of hilarious, and Follies are brilliant. It's not scalable. Nobody else has got... So you are still left with this problem where franchise movie making has sort of hollowed out lots of Hollywood and lots of cinema and the audiences in lots of different ways. And they haven't worked out how to creatively fill that and to revive things.
See, that's the thing. So I absolutely get the USP of Coppola. I get the mindset, that why it's made. I get the whole thing. The Costin thing is harder. Him thinking, I tell you what, people would like me in a Western.
Well, they have liked him in a Western before.
Yeah, but why if you're going to spend $40 million, I don't know, maybe it just feels a weird thing for him to go, this is the hill I'm going to die on.
Well, he loves Westerns. Think of Dances with Wolves. Yeah. He made that other, which is actually better probably, that one called Open Range in 2003. But that had sort of Robert Duvall in it, and I'm not quite sure I'm feeling the same about Sienna Miller. I mean, you're not going out there for the stars. You're going for Kevin Costner, maybe.
Yeah. And do you think this is something that will happen more in the future, people funding their own movies? Because if you're Tom Cruise, you can fund your own movie. Spielberg could fund his own movie. I know neither of those have particular problems getting movies funded. But given it is now almost impossible to get a movie funded, I mean, it's so mind-numbingly difficult. If you're someone who's sitting on, 200, 300, 400 million, all these people with their, tequila companies, there's nothing stopping, George Clooney selling his cider press and funding his own movie.
Yes, and when Cord Jefferson picked up his Oscar for the screenplay for American Fiction, he said, instead of $200 million movies, please can we have some like $10, $20 million movies, or even $10 million movies?
Yeah.
It's doable.
And then Bradley Walsh could fund those.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not a bad idea. Like a new United Artists.
Yes, of a type. And there are ways of doing it, but there has to be the recalibration. We were talking about this last week in terms of things like star salaries and what type of work you eventually want to be involved in. If you want to keep doing kind of big franchise movies in which I can't think it's particularly rewarding as an actor to do lots of those characters, or you want to work in interesting things, there's going to have to be a recalibration of what you accept, or you do, one for them and one for me.
Oh, we have another exclusive. Joyce in the Thursday Murder Club has just been cast because we've already got Pierce Brosnan and Sir Ben Kingsley and the
Helen
one for
Mirren.
Helen Mirren, and Joyce is Celia Imrie, which I'm very excited about.
That's terrific.
She's so mischievous.
That's
impish.
really terrific. Funnily, yes, I was talking with Stephen Frears about this the other day, and he was like, "Why doesn't he get Celia Imrie?"
Well,
listen, we'll be happy to return back and say he has got Celia Imrie.
And she is funding a lot of the movie as well.
Yeah.
She's putting $35 million.
Oh, she's so terrific.
Great. Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
So that's a bit of fun, isn't it?
Yes, that's wonderful.
But that's fully funded. We don't have to worry about that movie. That's all. That is all set up.
We are going to talk about Have I Got News for You, which is going to CNN. They're going to make an American version of it to sort of tie in with the presidential election, which is unusual because CNN is a news network, but they're going to put it in a double bill with Bill Maher's actual HBO show, which they're going to repeat on Saturday nights and make a sort of comedy hour looking at the news, which is a departure.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because historically and famously, and we'll talk about the reasons why, British panel shows, which are huge in the UK, it's one of our biggest things, the stuff we love, do not work in America. They absolutely do not work in America in the same way that America has all of those late night TV chat shows and those hosts, and that doesn't work over here.
Yep.
They try panel shows every now and again. They always fail. We try late night daily chat shows and they always fail as well. So Have I Got News for You? Hopefully this time it might work. It's the 4th time they've tried it in the US.
Yep.
They've done 3 pilots for this show. They did a pilot way back in 2004 for Bravo. They did one in 2009. I was talking to Jimmy Melville, who runs Hattrick and is the great genius behind all of their shows. And in 2009, they did it for NBC, and Jeff Zucker, who was the head of NBC now is head of everything. Jimmy said, we made this pilot. He said it was genuinely, it was a good one. And you can tell when a producer, he's saying, this is a good one. And he said, we've talked before about Americans and their overexcitement. And if forgive the language, but Jimmy said Jeff Zucker's just standing next to me and goes, that was fucking awesome. So Jimmy's like, oh, great. Well, listen, we're moving out here for the next 18 months. Let's make this thing. He then said that was when Conan O'Brien was just taken over from Jay Leno and there was lots of hoo-ha and it went badly. Jimmy said, the words fucking awesome were the last 2 words Jeff Zucker ever said to me. He said they did not get back in touch. They didn't kind of say, do you know what, because of this Conan stuff, we're rethinking. They didn't kind of go, yeah, listen, maybe we'll try another time. He said there was not a single word said from that moment onwards. So that
ghosted
iteration,
a long list.
Ghosted by Zucker, exactly. 2012, they tried again for TBS with a lot of the similar people. Now, panel shows over here, the 2 sort of daddies of panel shows are the 2 big behemoths of panel shows are Have I Got News for You and Would I Lie to You. Those are the 2 that run in an era where everything has got cancelled. Those are the 2 that are going to run. They're like on the Mount Rushmore of panel shows. And America has not fallen in love with either. We've done these 3 pilots for Have I Got News. Would I Lie to You had a whole series out in the US as well. And Americans have not fallen in love with them. They love the British versions when they watch them on YouTube. Said before, you go to the States and they just adore Would I Lie to You. But Would I Lie to You, Have I Got News, Taskmaster, they do them in America.
Yeah, and they don't work.
America is not interested. I've talked to a few of the producers, talked to Richard Wilson, who's the Have I Got News for You exec producer, and he's the person that keeps that show a hit for so long. And I talked to Peter Holmes, who runs Would I Lie to You? And it's interesting because no one really has the answer. One thing they both brought up was that Have I Got News for You and Would I Lie to You both have a lot to do with class and how obsessed we are in Britain with class. And you've got the Paul and Ian mechanic and you've got the Lee and David mechanic. And in America, they don't have that. That's not of interest to them. They also spoke about American comics being very much more obsessed with their own material, because that's how you get big in America, is you're on the road the whole time, you do your own stuff. Whereas in Britain, because we've had those Radio 4 panel shows for years, we're much more comfortable with bantering.
Well, that's the thing, I think, is that so much of their satire is done via the monologue. Like all of their sort of, the stuff at the start of late night is done in a monologue, and the banter thing there isn't such a read across at all. In fact, there isn't any really. It's all done via those late night hosts. It's interesting actually that a huge amount of their satire is done via late night television, political satire, because in my view, their politics is quite ripe for satire, but there are so few people, for instance, writing political humour since obviously there's been people like PJ O'Rourke in the past, but there are very few political satirists who in America who are doing in the written word. There's someone great at the Washington Post who I think is brilliant called Alexandra Petrie. She's fantastic, but and it's such a waste. They don't have sketch writers. They don't have sketch writers. That's the thing that we have that they don't have at all.
And sketch writers meaning like political
the
sketches
parliamentary
for
sketch writers
who
but they don't have to be just writing about Parliament. And we have them in every paper, and they're they're very popular, and obviously there's been a huge amount of raw material in both our politics over the last few years, and it always seemed to me like such a waste.
Yeah, and it's with Have I Got News for You particularly because that is satire and it's politics, and Jimmy and Richard have both said it's when you get left-wing comics and right-wing comics in the States, they have a slightly different attitude towards it. They find it less comfortable being funny about politics because it sort of feels like it's a bit more raw, and because they could be about to see the collapse of their entire civilization, and so it's harder for them to sort of sit back and relax and have fun and make jokes about it because they want to make a point a lot of the time. So this time round, as you say, CNN have commissioned it, which Mark Thompson, who used to be the head of the BBC, and weirdly was the features director at the BBC when Have I Got News for You first started in the UK, which is 1990.
Yeah.
So it's over 30 years ago that Mark Thompson has sort of been in charge of this show a lot. But it means, of course, he understands exactly what the show is. So Jimmy is able to say to him, look, you know what the show is, you know how we want to make it, you know the kind of show that we need to make, and we know it can't be all that American. We have to be able to relax into it a bit. We have to have it a bit looser. And Mark Thompson understands that and gets it. So they're doing 10 weekly episodes leading up to the election. So, it's not a pilot this time, it's a real series. So it's the first time they'll have a real chance to have a run at it. The good news is UK TV and iPlayer have both bought the rights as well.
Well, that'll be fun.
So we'll
get a lot more viewers. Like CNN averages 600,000 viewers in prime time.
Yes, exactly.
In the United States, which I'm given to believe is quite a big country. So it doesn't have to do amazing numbers. Let's put it that way. It will probably do bigger numbers in the UK than in the US.
I think so, but hopefully it's the sort of thing that if you do 10 episodes of it, that the American viewing public will kind of go, actually, we like the vibe of this. We like this sort of chatting around a subject rather than, whenever you talk to, again, Peter Holmes and Richard Wilson and various producers, they say Americans, they cannot understand. There's a number of things they cannot understand, absolutely can't get their head around. Why is there no prize? So, like, why are they competing? Like, what's the thing? They absolutely don't get that at all. Why do sometimes they give an answer they know to be incorrect?
Oh, yeah, because they really care about the actual points.
Yeah, exactly. Because like so much of the fun of going on those shows is someone asks you a question and you have fun. You talk around it, you have a laugh before you then go on to, but let's actually talk about the thing. So they absolutely don't understand that at all. And so you have to sort of show that a bit. As I say, the UK versions of these shows are very successful. Jimmy Mulver was talking about the one version of these shows that has ever worked in the States, the one big UK comedy entertainment-y show that's really worked is Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yes, that's been a huge success.
Yeah, it was an absolutely massive hit. And that came about sort of accidentally in that they were trying to do a pilot in the States. And in the States, of course, they're like, everyone has to be young and incredibly good looking. And Whose Line in the UK had a lot of North American people in it. Ryan Stiles, Colin Mockery, Americans and Canadians. And Ryan shows Drew Carey Whose Line, and Drew Carey goes, "This is hilarious. So I'll host this." And because he was a huge name, suddenly it gets off the ground. They host it. They can cast whoever they want because Drew Carey's allowed to have it. He's very much the Francis Ford Coppola of this piece. He can do what he wants, and that was a huge hit for almost no money. You know why it was a
huge hit? Because they have a massive improv tradition in that country, and almost everyone in like various of the shows I've written on, all of those people are like, yeah, I want to have an improv night. They've all come out of these, or they've come out of Second City, or they've come out of and they have that huge improv tradition, and so it is part of their tradition. So other types of political satire, it's not clear. If you're talking to Armando Iannucci when they did a Thick of It pilot, they for the US, and they did it with ABC, and it was networked, and it's never been aired. Although I think you can now find it.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it was an absolute nightmare. He said it was it was just endless executives, all of whom he thought were complete buffoons. He wanted the BBC to sell it to HBO. Which is obviously where lots of creators want to end up, but they didn't. They went with ABC because they paid more money. And it had really good people in it. It was Oliver Platt was in it, Michael McKean was in it, Christopher Guest, I think, was directing, but it just did not work. And he knew it wasn't working. And he thought this was it just didn't work at all. Yeah. And it had to be so sort of stripped of so much of what makes the thick of it, or a show like that, its essence because it was networked. And so then when he came back and did Veep with
Yeah.
HBO, where they just let you create, and they give you notes, but it's not, and their notes are always brilliant and helpful, but it's not, they do still say it is your show.
Yeah.
And so he was able to do what he wanted.
And Veep, by the way, if there's anyone in the world who loves the thick of it who has not watched Veep,
Oh my
then
God.
you've got such a treat in store.
Possibly my favourite television program ever.
Yeah, it's absolutely
I
amazing.
absolutely love it.
And the comedy is sort of identical. I mean, it goes in an American direction, but it's the same thing.
It's brilliant. But that season, ABC, when you think of shows that same season, ABC had made pilots of these British shows, The Thick of It, Footballers' Wives, and Life on Mars, and they passed on all of them. So you can see at that point how many things the networks were making and just saying, we loved it in the UK version, then they make it and like, this doesn't work.
It's interesting. So many UK sitcoms get made in the States. It doesn't happen the other way around.
No.
But, pretty much any big UK sitcom gets made. Ab Fab, they tried. Ab Fab was interesting.
Peep Show's now on its 5th attempt.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're doing it again now.
In-Betweeners, they've tried, and they just put different bits of talent
The Office
in it.
was obviously a brilliant success, and that was incredible. But it became its own show. The first episode, I went back and watched them again recently. It's quite interesting. The first episode of the US one really tracks the first episode of the UK one, and then it just spins off into this whole other world with these different characters. I mean, that is an exceptional show. Both versions of that show are completely brilliant, and it's sort of extraordinary that you can love them both differently.
Yeah, I think the American Office is a work of absolute genius. Again, if you've not seen it, it's brilliant. But wait till season 2 when it really beds in, and Steve Carell's performance is extraordinary. So that was huge, and I saw a really, really good interview with Stephen Merchant in the papers this weekend, talking about all sorts of things, talking about cancel culture, all sorts of things. But he's such a bright guy. But they were saying, oh, Stephen Merchant is the richest comedian in Britain, but didn't at any point mention, well, yeah, because the American Office is probably the most lucrative program in the history. I mean, it's at one point it was 12% of all of Netflix's viewing was The Office, and they're doing a spin-off of it, and so so The Office is absolutely enormous. The show that's recently broken through, and very, very few UK sitcoms do break through, and when they do, there's a lot of money in it. So The Office, the one that has just broken through, I think it's about to start its 4th season, maybe 5th season, is Ghosts.
Yes.
So Ghosts they remade, and it's been a really, really big hit, and it's going, it's running and running and running. So that's lovely, because the people who make Ghosts, much like Stephen, are the loveliest people, and so it's nice to know they're getting some network money now.
Then some other political ones, I'm trying to think. House of Cards, but obviously that had a little issue eventually.
Yes.
But House of Cards, that worked. And Shameless went on for quite a few seasons.
Shameless did pretty well.
With William H. Macy.
Yeah. In the format world, there's like Undercover Boss, which is a UK show. That was huge. Millionaire and Weakest Link, of course, were huge. But in terms of the other way around, American TV to UK TV, almost no scripted. No. Famously, we remember remaking Golden Girls as Brighton Bells, and that was a famous flop. In terms of formats, though, two of the biggest shows on British TV now, which are Gladiators and Apprentice, are both remakes of American formats. But the real era for that was the 70s. There's lots of game shows that we think are quintessentially British, all of which are American. So Blockbusters is American.
Is it?
Catchphrase is American. University Challenge is American. That was College Bowl. Blind Date is American. Wow. Family Fortunes. Strike It Lucky. Blankety Blank is American. So we took all of those things over in the 70s. But now that world, the game show world, we're in charge of. But it's very, very rare for British shows to really go over there and do well. But in the same way that Whose Line Is It Anyway sort of accidentally managed to get a summer slot years ago and became a huge hit, I'm hoping that the fact that they've committed to 10 episodes of Have I Got News For You means that the Americans might finally crack and embrace panel shows, because they've got great comic talent. These things are cheaper than the stuff they're making.
Oh yes,
anyway.
It's not expensive.
You can make a whole load of them. But the idea that Would I Lie to You or Taskmaster are not huge hits in America is crazy, because of course they should be. People listening to this in America, if you're executives or Francis Ford Coppola, let's do Would I Lie to You in the States, shall we? And good luck, by the way, to Have I Got News For You, which has got an amazing team behind it, and exciting that we'll be able to see it as well.
Yes, that's the good thing. We will be able to see it.
Yeah.
Now, should we finish talking about the Sunday Times Rich List, a sort of
Yeah.
annual event that comes out? And by the way, people are obsessed with lists.
Yeah.
In power lists, rich lists, anything like that. People also love to be in them. I remember there's this guy who used to own Reading called John Majewski, and someone went and a friend of mine once went and interviewed him, and even though it was months after the publication of the Rich List, casually laid on the coffee table outside his office was the Rich List in which he'd made his entry that year, and it's like, oh,
He was
gross.
a suitor of Cilla Black.
Yes, they were
in
both
his later
celebrity
days.
conservatives. And they met through their passion for celebrity conservative causes.
I mean, the Sunday Times Rich List is essentially a list of celebrity conservatives. But the thing I thought was interesting to talk about, so it's an extraordinary list, and towards the top of the list are the billionaires. But I thought it'd be interesting to talk about how difficult it is to become a billionaire through entertainment.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the people who are billionaires either inherited it from their parents or are in chemicals in some way or in property. But to actually become a billionaire through entertainment, it's so difficult that for the first time ever, Paul McCartney has just become a billionaire.
I mean, literally in the Beatles. You have to be in the Beatles to have become to be talent, by the way, we should say.
Yeah. And by the way, you have to be in the Beatles for 60 years to become a billionaire. You have to have sold records like your entire life, the whole time. And then Beyonce's got to do a cover version of one of your songs on her new album.
Just to pump you over the billion.
And even then, you just get over $1 billion. Just under $1 billion, the most successful writer of the last 40 years, J.K. Rowling, she's not a billionaire, despite the fact of the movies and the theatre and the
Although
books.
she gives away a lot of money, and
Yes.
she's constantly taking herself out of the billionaire category by donating a lot to charity. She's got her own foundation and what have you.
Clever.
Yeah.
But either way, they're the only two sort of bits of talent that are anywhere close to becoming a billionaire. But to be a billionaire in the industry, we sort of talk about, there's quite a few, aren't there? There's quite a few of the publishing families are there, the newspaper publishing families.
Thompson, this is essentially like inheriting property.
Yes.
Actual like a London postcode from your parents. You're inheriting a big legacy media thing, and that's why you become rich like that. What I think is quite interesting is that we don't have like executives, entertainment executives in America. Some of the big rich people would be, you'd have surround us, and they're Bob Iger. They have these huge pay packets, and they quickly become, and they obviously have enormous amounts of stock, and they quickly become on these lists. We don't have kind of entertainment executives, even record label owners on this. The methodology of the list is kind of so-so. There are people who never feature on this list who definitely have lots of money and not necessarily in entertainment, and they just don't know about them, and they just stay under the radar. So we do have the legacy families, did you say?
So Viscount Rothermere, who's behind the Daily Mail, so he's a billionaire.
Yes.
Elizabeth Murdoch
yeah.
is a billionaire, and it says she's a billionaire. She runs her own TV company, but that's
that's not the biggest part of the billionaire.
Having run a TV company, you'd have to sell an awful lot of episodes of Pointless to Holland to get over $1 billion. I would say, the Thompson family. Bernie Ecclestone is a billionaire, and almost all of that money is from Formula One, and almost all of the Formula One money is from television.
Yeah,
so we can sort of count him as as a TV billionaire.
TV executive adjacent, Bernie Ecclestone.
Exactly, but there's two theatre names in the billionaires, actually. So Sir Cameron McIntosh, who's very well known here, and John Gore, who's less well known, and who's a big theatre empire in the States. Now, I was having a conversation with someone recently. Now, they own theatres, they run theatres, they produce plays, so if you have successes in either of those areas, you make an awful lot of money. But I was chatting to someone the other day, and I think McIntosh and John Gore are both very, very much across this, which is the control of ticketing in theatre.
Yes.
There's an enormous amount of money, and the moment as a producer or a theatre you can take control of your own ticketing from the big agencies, that's when the real money starts rolling in. But it's nice that with both of those, John Gore and Cameron McIntosh, at least they're giving joy and they provide an entertainment.
Yes, and we should say that with the talent, when they have a big bump one year, it's almost always because they've toured. You get a huge amount of money from touring, unless your tour is very expensive to put on. So this is why Adele's doing brilliantly with her Vegas residency, because you don't have to move around; it's there all the time, and those are incredibly lucrative.
Yeah. So Ed Sheeran world tour, so he's worth $340 million.
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran, so he's not even close to be a billionaire yet. Funny enough, Harry Styles, he's got $175 million on this list. I mean, we take it with a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
But he's got money.
Yeah.
But one of his big investments I was not aware of until I read the list he's one of the investors in the Co-op Live venue in Manchester.
Yeah.
That is famously
It's had a bit few teething troubles.
Exactly, but here's now it's off the ground. I'm sure he'll be making more money now. Right, just under $1 billion. Talking of sports entertainment, Barry and Eddie Hearn.
Yeah.
Now Barry Hearn, like 20 years ago, he was doing great. He does the darts and the snooker,
Yeah.
but to go, oh no, you're going to be a billionaire pretty soon. But Eddie and the boxing and all that kind of stuff, the Hearn family have done very, very well out of sports entertainment.
Is the key, the linchpin.
Boxing is making more money for them than snooker, I think, with darts somewhere in the middle. But right at the top of the list is a name who is now very, very closely involved in entertainment, which is Len Blavatnik.
Yeah.
Now, Len Blavatnik owns most of Warner's music group. He has this company, Access Entertainment, which runs A24, who are the people behind so many big movies, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, and things like that.
In Zone of Interest, he was, they invest in...
A big investor in that.
Yeah, so
he's got that big digital gallery up in King's Cross that have like the David Hockley things. He owns the Theatre Royal Haymarket now, Len Blavatnik. So he's worth £29 billion, which is a lot. But again, it's lovely that all the Zone of Interest stuff, but most of his money is from aluminium and propylene as well. So I don't know if we can claim him.
I did notice lower down the list that one of the reasons Emma Watson was doing particularly well was because they'd valued her gin brand. Of course she's got a gin brand. We're going to have to do something bigger on this. But the gin brand was a big part of the valuation. Again, I do know why people set up gin brands is because you can produce straight away. It's not like whiskey or something like that. You can get it out the next day, basically.
Knock it out.
Yeah. But yes, so I noticed that was part of her valuation, which...
So yeah, if you are any sort of piece of talent, then you then have to invest in something that then makes you a lot of money, is the truth, I think. There's a lovely thing in here, though, which is for the first time in the history, and this ties into the rest of entertainment, for the first time in the history of the Sunday Times Rich List, there is an Apprentice contestant on the list, which is Susie Marr, who didn't even win The Apprentice. So she, I think she came third about 15 years ago. She didn't win, but Alan Sugar, who is on the list, he's over $1 billion, he gave her £200,000 and invested in her company, which is a skincare brand. She now owns the whole thing.
She was incredibly relieved last year, I imagine, to buy him out.
Yeah, so she's worth 73 million. But that's the first ever Apprentice contestant. Who knows? Maybe there'll be many, many more in the future. I mean, who can tell? But yeah, as a list, it's interesting that you have to be Paul McCartney, and you've had to have been Paul McCartney for 60 years for someone who creates their own IP and creates their own stuff to become a billionaire. And by the way, no one should be a billionaire, so we all take that as read. But given that some people are...
It'd be nicer if more talent, in the strict sense of the term, got it.
Exactly. And fewer petrochemical billionaires. Although, listen, we need petrochemicals.
Yeah.
That's true. Honestly, tomorrow, if there was no more blankety blank, it would be okay. If there were no more petrochemicals, actually, we'd be in trouble as a society. So actually,
be in a militia or being killed by a militia.
So maybe we have our priorities right. Now I think about it. God, that was a real, I really rolled back there.
The post-oil world we'll discuss on a future episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Which celebrities would fare best in the post-oil world.
That's a good idea.
Do you have any recommendations?
Do I have any recommendations?
I do.
A couple. Funnily enough, literally last night, talking of not coping very well in a post-oil world, we watched Triangle of Sadness, which I've never seen. I mean, it's a mood, but it's extraordinary. I mean, it's if anything upsets you at all, do not watch it. But I thought it's
like your trigger warning.
Yeah.
If anything upsets you, don't watch this.
But I absolutely loved a 3-part documentary on BBC Two this week called Secrets and Spies about defectors and about moles in that kind of 80s Cold War. And it's absolutely brilliant. It talks about Oleg Gordievsky and various people. So for fans of that sort of thing, I absolutely love that.
I am going to recommend I think it's a genre of one of the most towering achievements in British television is Inside Number 9, which is on its final season. There are 2 episodes of it so far have dropped on iPlayer, both of which I watched at the weekend. They are exceptional. It's Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith. I think what they've done with that show is so extraordinary. Yeah. They have a half hour in which they are different people every single week, and they make us care to be able to only have a half hour and to tell very complex and layered, often quite philosophical, emotional, darkly comic stories, and to make you care about new characters every single week. you can see why actors want to do it. I mean, the cast in the first episode of the new one, which is called Boo to a Goose, included Mark Bonner, Siobhan Finneran, Charlie Cooper from This Country, Joel Fry from Plebs, Philippa Dunn, Susan Wokoma, Matthew Kelly. I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary, and it's such a mood. I think they are genuine like TV geniuses. I think they're extraordinary.
I agree, and they don't repeat themselves. And it's
how do they not? They've done done about 50 of these. They've done 9 seasons, and they're now going to, which I'm very excited about. They're going to take West End, and they've got a new thing which I've just bought tickets for last night after I watched that. I thought, I need to get in now on this. It's called Stage Fright.
Yeah, and I have to. I think it's one of the most towering achievements of 21st century television. It just is. It's extraordinary what they.
There's no one else doing it, and they are extraordinary and amazing. And I can't. Yeah, so that I can't recommend Inside Number 9 enough.
Yeah, make sure you keep the word enough in there in the edit. I'm afraid I can't recommend Inside Number 9. And so, sorry, I think I interrupted when you said it's starting in the West End.
You can get tickets now for it, and it starts in Wyndham's Theatre January next year.
And listen, we know you can make $1 billion in the theatre.
Well, I hope they do. If anyone deserves it.
Great. Well, listen, we're going to do a question and answer episode on Thursday.
Yes, we are. Please send in your questions. The rest is entertainment@gmail.com.
And we'll see you on Thursday.
Bye-bye, everyone.